My name is Nick Higgins. I am the Chief Librarian of the Brooklyn Public Library, and like other libraries and other schools across the country, we've seen and been paying attention to the rise in book challenges and book bans that have been just increasing over the last couple of years. And about 2 years ago, at the beginning of 2022, we had a conversation, a couple of us here at the library, about what we were seeing and more so how we could intervene in material ways with kids who were bearing the brunt and at the business end of a lot of these targeted censorship efforts that we're seeing across the country. Here, thank goodness, in Brooklyn, we don't have those challenges or those issues, but knock on wood, and we're hoping that we're not going to see those censorship efforts here in Brooklyn anytime soon. But for the kids who are in smaller communities in Collierville, Tennessee, or Orlando, Texas, or places where libraries are really fighting for their very existence, we wanted to make sure that us as an institution, as a profession, can stand up with those children and with those families, shoulder to shoulder, and push back on these unjust censorship efforts that were happening. So, every year we put up book displays that showcase authors who have been censored or targeted, and we'll still continue to do that. And it draws attention, and any opportunity that we have to leverage the voices of people who are being silenced and marginalized, we will certainly do that. But we wanted to go a little bit further and reach people where they are. So we decided to come up to launch this program called Books Unbanned, and Books Unbanned has three very straightforward goals. One is to provide a free digital library card to any young person aged 13 to 21 anywhere in the United States. All they really need to do to get this library card is to send us a message and tell us what kind of censorship challenges they're facing in their community. They can talk to us about any access issues that they're having, and we will issue them a free digital library card to the Brooklyn Public Library, which gives them unrestricted access to over 500,000 ebooks and audiobooks from our collection. These are banned books, and these are books that aren't banned. It's really, giving a library card to anyone in the United States, and they have full access to our collection. The second goal is to really support teens themselves. Teens are really being targeted in this new spate of book bans over the last few years. Young adult titles in particular, ostensibly responsible adults in communities wanting to save the children and protect, quote unquote, young minds from what they deem offensive or obscene by hiding these stories and these books away. So we wanted to support those teens. So what the teens here in Brooklyn decided to do was to create a Teen Intellectual Freedom Council that now meets once a month on Zoom, and their numbers in this council are growing. So they now meet with their peers across the country in places like Texas and Tennessee and Idaho and North Dakota. And they get together once a month on Zoom to talk about the books that they like to read, what's happening on the ground in certain communities where censorship efforts are taking root, and they listen to different special guests, First Amendment experts and advocates. They come and they address the group and talk about different strategies on pushing back against these censorship efforts. The third goal of Books Unbanned is really to, some of what we're doing here, to take back the narrative from the folks who were advocating for book removal in local communities. When books are removed from shelves these days, it's oftentimes quite disruptive. Oftentimes you have groups coming into what is usually a very staid school board meeting or a board meeting at a public library, and shouting down educators, screaming at librarians behind the reference desk, and really becoming very disruptive, and that attracts a lot of attention. So what oftentimes happens is libraries and schools, they respond to those efforts rather than being proactive. So what we really want to do with Books Unbanned is to situate the conversation around intellectual freedom and the freedom to read, expanding access to collections and services, and situate that in democratic organizations like public libraries and schools where it belongs, and for once put the folks who were advocating for censorship on the defensive. And that's really where Books Unbanned comes from. And we just celebrated our first year of Books Unbanned, and we have issued this first year over 6,300 library cards to young people in every state in the United States and DC. And these students have checked out over 100,000 titles, and it's not just banned books that they're checking out, it's really, an expression of what a library should be. So these students are checking out any book that they find interesting and they're curious about, and we couldn't be more happy that we're providing the service for young people, but it's also quite, it's still quite disturbing that the book challenge and the book bans are continuing to increase. And further, that young people, particularly with identities that are outside the norm in those communities, are being further marginalized and targeted. So we have a lot of work to do, and we're looking for other library partners and other schools to join the effort. And this is where the conversation around intellectual freedom and the freedom to read belongs, here in a public library, and we continue to fight on.